The anatomy of the shell has three parts: the crown, the edge, and the hinge. The crown of the lava shell is a smooth, carefully polished, gently rounded surface. It's the most versatile of the shell's parts and the one that transmits the greatest amount of heat. Use the crown of the shell for the following strokes: effleurage, the figure eight, small circular petrissage, classic petrissage, opposing petrissage, pulling, compressions, and friction. The edge of the lava shell is ideal for deeper, more specific work: dragging, edging, and friction. The small rounded knob on the back of every lava shell is the hinge. Use this for your deepest work, including trigger points. Stationary, circular, and twisting. Remove the sachet from the packaging. Fold the corners loosely towards the center and place inside the shell. With one finger, flatten the sachet against the bottom of the shell. Open the activator and pour contents into the shell. Set the shell aside and wait 5 minutes for the activator to fully absorb. The cooling dish can be filled with cool water and placed within easy reach during the treatment. If the shell becomes too hot, place in the cooling dish for 5 to 10 seconds. Or place a cool damp towel in the cooling dish. If the shell is too hot, simply place the shell in between the damp towel and wrap it up for 5 to 10 seconds.
The client begins in the supine position. Apply oil with effleurage strokes. Using the crown of the shell, effleurage from the wrist to the shoulder 3 times. Continue with effleurage moving from the wrist to the shoulder and under the shoulder. Palming petrissage. Under the shoulder and moving back to the wrist. Again, palming petrissage from the wrist up to the shoulder, under the shoulder, and back to the wrist. Continue using palming petrissage with the crown of the shell 3 times. With the crown of the shell, begin the figure 8 stroke, moving from the wrist up over the shoulder, around the elbow, and back to the wrist. from the wrist, around the elbow, up over the shoulder, and back down to the wrist. Perform this stroke 3 times. Compressions, using the crown of the shell, moving from the wrist to the elbow and gliding back to the wrist. Wrist to the elbow and gliding back, compressing using the crown of the shell. Move in 3 lines, and on your 3rd series, begin compressions at the attachments at the elbow. Drag back to the wrist and begin petrissage, moving from the wrist to the shoulder, under the shoulder, and back to the wrist. Complete this series with 1 deep effleurage stroke, moving from the wrist to the shoulder and dragging back. Turn the client's arm over, interlock fingers, and begin effleuraging wrist to shoulder on the inner arm. Effleurage 3 times, from the wrist to the shoulder and back. Continue effleuraging using the figure 8 motion, moving from the wrist, around the elbow, up over the shoulder, and back down to the wrist. Perform this figure 8 stroke 3 times. Begin petrissaging the inner arm, moving from the wrist up to the shoulder, gliding back down to the wrist. Perform this stroke 3 times. Begin compressions on the inner arm, moving from the wrist to the elbow, working in 3 lines. Continue with compressions at the attachments of the elbow. Drag back to the wrist and perform deep effleurage, moving from the wrist to the elbow, up around the shoulder, and back to the wrist. Repeat the entire arm series before moving to the hand. Using the crown of the shell in the palm of the hand, effleurage. Moving around the palm using the crown of the shell, continue to effleurage. Using the edge of the shell, friction around the heel of the hand. Friction between the carpals. Turn the shell over and use the hinge of the shell to friction the palm of the hand with a twisting motion, moving around the palm of the hand. With the crown of the shell, apply compressions to the palm of the hand. With the crown of the shell, continue with effleurage. Holding the fingers together, using the edge of the shell, friction between each finger. After frictioning between the fingers, turn the hand over. Using the edge of the shell, friction between the metacarpals. With the crown of the shell, effleurage the web of the hand. Place the shell under the hand and use the thumb to petrissage each finger while gliding out with the shell. The shell is underneath the finger and the thumb is on top of the finger, petrissaging. Petrissage the palm of the hand. Finish the arm series with effleurage. Move from the wrist, up over the shoulder, and back to the wrist 3 times. Repeat this entire series to the opposite arm and hand.
To clean the shells, remove the cap, remove the sachet, and rinse the shell. Wash it with antibacterial soap, rinse again, and let dry.